This is Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Pushing you to year-on-year progression. With your host, Ross McKinley.
Yo, Ross McKinley, Aesthetically Trained, the podcast, episode 6. And today, I've got my first guest, very special guest, a close friend, but most importantly, a world champion strength and conditioning coach.
There it is.
Reiss Silva.
That's the only reason I chose to do the podcast. I've been waiting for that intro for like ages and ages, but yeah, sounds good that.
So Reiss has recently just had one of his fighters, Sonny Edwards, just recently won a world title. He's one of the latest British champions, isn't he, to win a title. It was a fight where he was an underdog, boxed to a 12-round decision win, which was a really, really good result. No doubt the strength and conditioning had an impact on that. In this episode, though, we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about his fighters. We're going to talk about how you can learn from fighters, what lessons has he got. We're going to talk about weight loss versus fat loss, because he's got a lot of experience with weight cuts with these fighters. We're also going to look for some of you, no doubt, the men listening to this episode. You might play football on a weekend. You might do a little bit of jiu-jitsu. That's getting popular now. MMA, boxing. Whatever your sport is, I'm going to cover in this episode with Reiss, with an actual fucking expert, how you can combine the two. How can you get swole, get ripped, get shredded, look like me, perform like this cunt. So that's what we're going to go for. So start at the beginning. Reiss, I'll let you, for the people that don't know you, talk me through where to start, how to get here.
Yeah, as I said, name, Reiss Silva, probably better known as Elite Step, unfortunately. Most people actually call me that now, which is annoying, but I guess it's good for branding. I'm 29, strength conditioning coach for combat athletes. 90%, probably 99% of my clientele are now combat athletes, MMA, boxers, Thai boxing, all those sort of combat athlete disciplines. Started off doing pretty much what you would have done, PTing in sort of commercial gyms. Worked in a pure gym for a number of years, just doing general population stuff, learning my trade, all that sort of stuff. And over, 3 years ago, I want to say, 2018, I moved back to Leeds. And that was the time when I was like, right, I want to go strictly down the combat athlete route now. I'm going to relocate to Leeds. I sort of done my research and thought, this is a good area for fight sports. Let's get there, let's start building it. So alongside, again, working at a pure gym, started building up my client base and working with like 1 or 2 fighters and just for free, basically volunteering almost. Just to build up my experience, get my name out there a little bit, get content for socials, build my brand. And then, as I say, between 2018 and now, it's just kind of snowballed. Started getting paid, and then I think it was, when was it now? After I was back for a year, so about 2019, April time, again decided to take a plunge, move over to Graft House, where I sort of met you. And that was the time where I was like, right, I'm not going to do really general population anymore, I'm just going to go all out, combat athletes, roll the dice and see what happens. So that's a little bit about me, and I say now today I'm primarily all combat athletes, boxers, and at good level as well.
Awesome. One thing I want people to listen to there right away, we can remember in the first episode when I touched on my history and how I got into coaching, Reiss now, and I'm sure you'll agree on this in a second, he's just opened his own gym. That's where we're filming from today. If you're on the YouTube, we're going to do some stuff on my Facebook later live from here as well.
I should have probably put that in my own bio.
He's just opened his own gym as well. He's not taught you that, as well as fucking being a coach to champions. He's just opened his own gym. The one thing I picked out there, whatever your craft is, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you want to do, Reiss has done the time for free. He realised that he wanted to work with elite athletes, and he said, listen, how can I do it? And he's went back and he's offered to work for free, and he's backed himself and he's proved himself, and that's how he's got here. Very often in business and in life, people look at the end result. They see the gym, the world champs he's got now. He's working with Mark Diakis in the UFC. I've probably butchered his name there. He's got Sonny Edwards. He's got loads of people now. Dalton Smith. We're going to talk about that during the episode, of course, these fighters. But people see that and they think, fucking hell, he's got it. Look, he's landed on his feet to work with these fighters. Has he fuck? He's worked hard from day one. He's went right the way back, and he's done it for free to get where he is now. So I think for me, that's something that everyone should always take from this. And I hope you've already learned that from me. I worked for free as a coach first in Edge Gym back in the day. Went in and just said, I'll just do what I can. You've got to be willing to go back and start somewhere. So what is it that made you want to get into it, Reiss? Why did you decide fighters? And then what do you get from training now? What kind of buzz do you get, I guess?
I guess just going back real quick, just in terms of what you're saying about working for free, I think that's a really key point. Like the other week I got asked by someone on a DM, like, how'd you manage to get a world champion so quickly? And I was like, Jesus Christ, like you're only seeing one section of it. As you say, people don't see the whole journey and just see the end point. And I think even for people in terms of like their transformation, so like the guys you work with, people always just think it's like an 8-week, bam, you shred for 6 weeks and that's it. They don't see that year or that people are working with you, the time when they're putting on a little bit of fat because they're trying to get bigger and their body doesn't look like it does at the end goal. So I think it's really important to be involved in that process and not just think, right, end goal, let me get there as quickly as possible. Actually enjoy the journey along the way and do all that shit, as you say, for free and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, why? Basically, it was, so do you know how people always say you need to find your passion in life and you should only work for a job that you're passionate about and stuff like that? Like for me, I think that's absolute bullshit, to be honest. I think if you search time and time again for your passion, you're just going to end in so many dead ends. I basically just went through life, needed jobs at certain times, hated them all. I've done removals, I've worked for a water company, I've worked for a desalination plant, I've worked for River Island, literally done everything and hated all of it. And I just stumbled across a passion. I never really was looking for it. It weren't something I was like, right, I'm going to go out today, find something I'm passionate about. I just stumbled across it. I went traveling for a bit, 2015-ish, I think. And when I was there, obviously you're really chilled, really relaxed, and it was like, right, what do I want to do in my life now? And that was when I actually had the first ideas that it's something I thought about for a while, and I was like, why not just do it now? Like, what's the worst that can happen? I hate work anyway, so why not give it a go? And if it goes tits up, then I'm in the same position anyway. So that's where it first started, and also because I did fight a little bit myself, not at high level, but just a little bit. It was kind of like, right, why not put the two together? Fighting's, in my opinion, like one of the hardest sports in the world.
100%.
People need to be conditioned and need to be strong because their life's at stake at the end of the day. You could die in a ring. So I was like, I really want to help fighters reach their potential. And that doesn't just mean become world champions. That means if you're an amateur fighter and you just want to have one fight and just see how you get on, I want you to be in the best position to do that. I want you to be fitter, stronger. So whether you win, draw or lose, you don't look back and go, oh, if only I'd done more. If only I was a little bit stronger, if only I was a little bit fitter. So that was kind of why or how I got into it and why I wanted to go down that route. And for me, it's just like, now it is a passion, but it wasn't something that I knew was a passion and actively looked for it. It's just grown from a hobby of enjoying combat sports to now becoming passionate about physical development of fighters.
Awesome. Sick. It's pretty good intro, isn't it? Pretty good. No, I think that's really good. I mean, I think I'm surprised about the passion thing, to be honest. I think, so to give you a bit of background on me and Reiss, I'm a massive boxing fanboy for starters. For those of you that know me will know I love boxing, so I know a little bit. But me and Reiss met at Graft House, which is a gym in Leeds, a few years ago, and we've become friends. I've actually trained Reiss. Reiss has done some of my programs and done muscle gain with me, so he's going to give you a little bit of insight into that. But then along the way, I think both have been doing our own thing. We've risen to relatively good levels. I wouldn't say I'm a world champion, but he certainly has, and he's built this business and he's come here. And I think to hear the background to it just shows you that you don't always know what you want to do, but when you have got an idea, there's a great quote, I think it's Gary Vaynerchuk, says it's always better to fall on your own sword. It's much better to give a go what you want to do, and even if you fail at that, so what? You could be working for someone else for 10, 20, 30 years and get sacked and you failed at someone else's dream anyway. You might as well have a go at your own thing and do the best you can. So whether that's alongside your job, your own career, whatever it is, could just be even actually, like we said, giving it a go and having a boxing match, having a challenging yourself in combat sport, getting out of your comfort zone. You know, that's something that I fucking love talking about. And what Reiss did say there was, and I think that's where we share similar values, is that it's about maximising what you've got. What Reiss specialises in is when a fighter comes to him, he can't control the result on the night, but he can give them the best possible chance. They're not going to fail because of their fitness, their strength, and obviously in the gym that you can improve their mental strength as well.
I think I had this conversation with my business partner, my mate, who's going to be coming down here as well, because he was in a situation where he was like, when do I come over? When do I put all my eggs in that basket? And I was just like, roll the dice, like what's the worst that can happen? And I think we sort of discussed it as well, and I think it's so true. Like, people nowadays, they don't fully go for something, not because they're scared of failing. I think the biggest issue is that they're scared of the embarrassment of what people think. So like, if I open up a gym and this in 2 years' time has gone tits up and I don't own it anymore, I don't give a fuck. I've tried it and I know. Like, I think some people, they don't do anything because they're like, oh, if it doesn't work, I've got to show my face around and admit that I failed at something. Like, so I think whatever you're doing, like, who cares what people think? Roll the dice, see what happens, and don't be scared of that embarrassment. Like, just own it. Sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to succeed. It's just the way it goes. So, yeah.
I think the quickest way on that, just to finish up this introductory bit before we get on to the questions, is I always say to the lads that work with me in the 28 days, the 12 weeks, whatever it is there's the phrase burn the boats. Like, don't leave anything behind. Like, if you give it your all, no matter what the result is, you won't have any regrets. When people have regrets on stuff, it's because they maybe know what they should have done. Whether that's just putting a little bit extra time in, whether it's just doing the things you know you should do. It could be getting your diet right, could be asking for help, could be asking the question, could be studying a little bit more. Most of the time, most men, particularly nowadays with all the information out there, we've got an idea of the direction that we want to head in. But the difference is do you do it or not? It's one thing knowing, it's another thing to apply, isn't it? So that's the goal. So in terms of the next bit, mate, the questions. I've got some questions. What I've tried to do for you listeners, I've tried to pick some questions that I think will get the most out of Reiss and will hopefully give you a hand. So we've got, the first one is, how can the average man combine sport and aesthetics? So I'm sure some of you out there maybe play football on a weekend. I mentioned at the beginning, you've got a sport. How can we combine the two, Reiss, and what are the mistakes that you see and see people doing?
Yeah, I think a lot of my guys, where you see fighters in general, are always in really good shape. So I think the aesthetic side of it, of a sports performance or a performance-based program, is like a knock-on effect. So with my fighters, like, really and truly, to a certain degree, it's not important what they look like.
Yep.
I mean, you take someone like Sonny, for example, doesn't look like a Dalton, for example, who's ripped and shredded.
Yep.
But the performance side and the aesthetic side is just a knock-on result of the stuff you're doing. So I think if you are kind of combining the two, I think first thing is to prioritize which one's most important to you. Is it performing on a Saturday at football, or is it your aesthetics? Because sometimes if the goals are murky and you're not clear on...
Do you think you can do both? Sorry, do you think... I mean, there's something I've said before, I love it. Chase two chickens, catching on. If you're trying to do two things...
Yeah. You can, but obviously the results won't be as good as if you was to just have one and run.
And you've
100%.
got to accept that.
And you've got to accept that. And it comes down to prioritizing it. Like, as I say, is your priority to perform well on a Saturday, or is it to look good? And your program should be based around that a little bit. As I said, you can do both. For example, if it is performance, you might just have like a specific day a week where you're doing, I don't know, like a max effort lift or more explosive stuff or speed work. Or you can combine that into your program as well, like in the warm-up, doing a bit of speed work before you go into like your higher rep stuff. But it's just being clear on which one you prioritize and which one you want to get the better results at. And again, if you're playing like football on a Saturday, like I do at the minute, to be honest, I just kind of roll with that. I don't do any training to really improve on that. It's just fun. It's just a hobby, I'd say.
What mistakes would you say you see made? So, for example, I'm sure everyone's seen them. Not to dig anyone out at the gym, but there's always some turkey at the gym doing plyometrics or jumping around or doing something that elite athletes do and look like they're doing it badly. They've maybe seen it on YouTube. They're doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing. So it's just a real quick, like, do's and don'ts. What would you say there's some stuff we all should be working on if we want to be better athletes in our own right? Is there some stuff we should avoid unless we're working with the experts? What would you say to that?
I'd say like the plyometric stuff definitely has a place, more from like tendon strength and mobility stuff.
So plyometrics, to jump in for those who know, that's like you're jumping, your explosive work. It might be jumping off the box, landing, reactive work that's going to improve the explosiveness, the elasticity of the muscle, if you like. So
and I think like with that stuff as well, it's really enjoyable to do. Seeing with your jumps and your med ball work, throwing a med ball around, like even if you're stressed at work one day, you're coming in the gym and you start slamming a med ball, like you feel better straight away. So I think there's definitely a place in a program for that. I'd say you already hit the nail on the head in terms of the don'ts. Like, don't just watch a YouTube video and start running it, because some of those explosive things, you think if you're jumping off a box and landing, it's like 8 times your body weight going through your joints. So if you're not in a position where you can handle that over time, that's a high risk of injury.
That would be no good for me.
No, it wouldn't be. 8 times your body weight's a lot of force, isn't it? But that's what I would say is the biggest don't, is just don't watch a YouTube video, something that looks cool, and run with it without any context of is it what you need and is it suitable for your body at that moment in time.
Awesome. What would you say if you were looking... I'm a big fan of like an upper lower split, 4 sessions a week. That's what I say for the general public. Most people working with me are not. Are you training 4 times a week? Would you add in little bits of sport specific conditioning to all 4 sessions, or would you do a separate session every week? What would be your thoughts on that? I'm putting you on the spot a bit here, but this is what I wanted to grill you a bit and get you.
I would maybe just sprinkle a little bit throughout the week. So in your warm-ups, you could probably do some of your speed work, go into your heavy lifts, and then maybe at the back end, go into your higher rep work and, you know, your failure work and bodybuilding type stuff off the back of that. I'd sprinkle it across. You can do almost like a more of a undulated type stuff where maybe on like a Tuesday you do like a max effort day, on a Thursday you do more explosive stuff. You can do it that way. Maybe on like a Monday, Wednesday have like your bodybuilding type workout. But on the whole, I'd say just small doses. Yeah, just little sprinkles across the week, and that will add up over time.
This is perfect because it's led us into the next question nicely. It's like we know what we're doing. It's like we know what we're doing. So what bodybuilding info, or what bodybuilding techniques, maybe some of the stuff you've learned with me, some of the stuff you've online, what do you use both yourself and with fighters? So with elite athletes, what can we learn? What transfers?
I think this gets bashed a bit because obviously when you think of bodybuilding, you think about packing on muscles. And when you look at fighters, that's not what you want. It's a weight restricted sport. If you get too big as well, you're probably going to become a little bit stiffer, a little bit slower. So, but there's definitely some methods that you can implement at the right time in the right doses. So a lot of what the guys need, some fighters can afford to pack on muscle as well. They can afford to add a bit more muscle mass because the more muscle mass you got, the more water you hold, which means on fight week you can cut weight a lot easier. So on some athletes, you see someone like Mark, for example, who is shredded, and he's still got like a stone to lose, but he holds so much water that he can cut so much on fight weight easily.
Got you.
So he makes weight easily, even though you look at him and you're like, where's the stone coming off from here? So that's one thing to bear in mind. And again, in terms of getting them stronger, if you're doing a squat, for example, you can go into like your failure stuff to build their strength in those exercises. That's going to make their max effort lift go up. So working on those weak points, for example, if doing a bench press and it's struggling in a sticking point, you can hammer the triceps, you can go to failures and all that sort of stuff. A lot of what I use, I do a lot of AMRAP sets, or which you use as well. And I use them
as many reps as possible. Just in case you weren't.
And I use that a lot in like the prep phase, so that first 4 weeks when they're back in the gym, to get their strength levels up, strength endurance up, get their general endurance up a little bit as well. So we might do like a little circuit of like 3 exercises. And just 10 minutes, how many times can you get through that? We might do something like you gave to me, for example, like the press ups, 2 minutes, how many can you get up?
That's a good one. 2 minute press up challenge is good.
Just to get general strength levels up at the start of camp. A lot of it, what I do is in that beginning phase, and then obviously as you go towards camp, then you get a bit more specific in terms of your program, exercise selection, and all that sort of stuff.
Awesome, good. Perfect. We're leading on nicely to the next one. So we mentioned there, we talked a little bit there about this will tie in nicely. So we talked a little bit about having more muscle, and then that gives you the ability to cut more water. So that's because, I mean, my understanding, I repeat this a lot, so it fucking better be right, is that for your muscle glycogen, so the carbohydrates that we store in the muscles. So when we've got the muscle fibers, your biceps across the body, wherever it is, within your muscle, you store muscle glycogen, which is when you eat carbohydrates, it's stored as muscle glycogen. Now, for every 1 gram of muscle glycogen or carbohydrates stored, you store 3 ml of water. Is that what you go off? Yeah, as well. That's good. I've been repeating it years. So that means, obviously, as Reiss mentioned, you've got much more opportunity if you have more muscle, theoretically, to cut more water, which will drop your weight. So something I want to talk to Reiss about, which I think is really fitting, he does some massive, crazy, you'll have seen in the UFC, no doubt, you've seen people hobbling on the scales. Now, he doesn't do that with his fighters. But something that's interesting to talk about is what's the difference between a weight cut, which is what you specialise in, to get people ready for a fight, and then what I do, which is more fat loss. Because I always harp on to this with all my clients online all the time, that your weight on the scale doesn't necessarily equal your progress, and you shouldn't be reading too much into that. It's just one variable. But Reiss, take it away on that. So weight loss versus fat loss and weight cuts.
The main difference in simple terms is fat loss is in a calorie deficit. On fight week, when we're doing like a weight cut, we're not looking to lose fat. It's too short term in a week. So we're keeping the calories up. They're still eating maintenance calories. So on fight week, biggest mistake fighters make is that they cut all their food. But we're not trying to lose fat. It's too short a time. We're trying to manipulate more things like water, carbohydrate stores, fiber stores, all that sort of stuff. So that's the biggest difference, that fighters on fight week should be eating at maintenance calories, 2,000 calories or whatever it is. And what we're actually looking at is cutting the things that aren't sustainable. So you can do it for fight week, but longer term would be very unhealthy. So we're looking at water cutting. So basically dehydrating your body. We're looking at cutting carbohydrate stores. We're looking at cutting fiber from the gut, which all in the short term will let that weight drop down, they weigh in, and then we get it all straight back in. That would be the biggest difference, that calories we're not cutting because we're not looking to look fat, not looking to lose fat. We're trying to manipulate all those other variables that in the short term can help us lose weight, but in the longer term, not great. And it kind of goes back to more the people that you work with, for example, you know, when they take the weight on the scales all the time and people trying to lose weight, and they're like, oh, but today my weight's gone up and today it's gone down, it's just the way the body is. That fluctuation is what we're manipulating in fight week. So if they've had more carbs one evening, the next day they get on the scale and they're higher, that's why. Yeah, we're manipulating all those stuff during fight week.
This is what we're trying to look back to, and what I want to sort of use the podcast for is give you real world examples of how manipulating your carbohydrates or your water can actually impact your weight. Too often, lads will come to me, or you'll hear people saying, I've had a mint week with my diet, I've got my training right, I've got all my meals right, I've been drinking my water, I've done everything, and they're having a really positive week, and then they get on the scales at the weekend, and the fucking scales of doom, and all of a sudden the scales don't go the right way, or they don't reflect the work that they've put in, and the person thinks that the hard work across all the week's been undone. Now, equally, the other side of that is you could have had a pretty bad week, but if you're clever, you know the day before you weigh in how to manipulate the scales, which person's done better. I could quite easily say to people, right, the day before you get on the scales, let's stop drinking water at 6 o'clock. Let's make sure that you go to the toilet before you get on. Let's make sure that you cut carbohydrates. You can do all these little things and it'll manipulate your weight. It doesn't mean that you're making progress. So we need to have, and everyone should, I believe, is when you're weighing in, when you're doing check-ins, particularly for aesthetics, what I'm doing, which is obviously different to Reiss, when you're trying to look your best, there needs to be more than one variable. Just like, to be fair, for Reiss's stuff, weight's important, but it means fuck all if they can't fight. It's never one variable or one area at all costs, and it's really, really important. Remember that. Just give some examples. What sort of weight, because this will shock some people, I think, is what sort of weight can you see people lose in the last week in kilos or stones, or however you want to put it across?
Yeah, so boxing isn't as bad as MMA, just because the weight classes, there's more of them in boxing. So boxer, typically they'll go into fight week 4 kilos, 3 kilos overweight, and then we'll cut fiber, do a water load and sweat it out if we need to. So I'd say that's pretty standard. When you get into MMA, it's a lot more, because the weight classes are a lot more spaced out. So on average, typically a good weight cut is probably a stone on fight week, 12 pounds. And that's a good weight cut.
So a stone in a week.
A
stone in a week.
And that's a good weight cut. And again, it comes down to, like, are they well hydrated before they do that? Are they eating carbohydrates? Are they high in fiber? Because 12 pounds when all them things are high is a lot more easy than 12 pounds when they've already stopped drinking, they've already cut carbs, they've already cut all their creatine, they're not eating a fibrous diet, because that's a big problem, because they've got nothing to
That's a massive point. So what Reiss is saying there is, if they're not going into that week optimally, if they're not getting their water right, if they're not hydrated, there won't be the foundation there to cut from in the first place, which is what I always say to people in the fat loss phase is, if you're not, you never start a diet where you aim to end up. You need to have that room, that scope to cut from. So just take that from a fucking pro, from Reiss. You know, weight loss doesn't always equal fat loss, and there's loads of tricks around it. You've got to look at the bigger picture.
And you look at those guys as well. Typically, what you think of fighters after they've fought, after they do an extreme weight cut, because it's not sustainable, they go and binge for 2-3 weeks afterwards. So for your guys, like, who might be thinking, oh, stone in a week, we'll get on that, it's not going to work. They're going to crash pretty quickly. Performance is going to drop, testosterone is going to drop, all that sort of stuff. So that more fat loss, calorie deficit, sustainable is far better longer term than those drastic weight cuts.
Awesome. Next one. What can we learn from elite athletes? What are the differences? What are the main 3 lessons? Or what can you give from your athletes? What would you say is going to be valuable for the men and for the general public? What can we learn from them?
Do you know what it is? I think it's controlling the things that are in your control. Not worrying about anything external.
Control the controllables.
Control the controllables, exactly. I think mindset is probably the number one. The difference is that they've got a goal and they will do anything to reach that goal. As I say, they control what they do, don't worry about anything external, and they're in that mindset of that they're not going to fail. They're just going to go all out, all into their goals and get it done. Dedication, commitment, and just, again, being involved in the process rather than the end goal. Like, during a camp, their mind's not on just the victory. It's not just on that. It's right, make this session good. what am I lifting in this session? Make this technical session good. Make, you know, all that sort of stuff. And over camps, when you're doing that for 12 weeks, it all starts to snowball and stack up. And fight night's just the pinnacle of all of that previous 12 weeks. You know, the old quote is that the fight's won long before fight night.
Yeah.
It's done in the build up to that. And it's similar to your guys. It's like, you know, don't just be focused on a number on a scale, what you're looking at.
The destination, focusing on the journey.
Yeah, just focus on those 1%ers. What can you do today to win today?
Which is interesting that you're saying that with fighters, because I think a lot of people probably imagine that fighters maybe aren't that, not necessarily not that bothered, but I think maybe don't enjoy camp as much.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying there, and you're working with these people, is actually the ones that maybe are enjoying camp or trying the hardest in the sessions, that adds up to the result on the night.
Absolutely, and it's all about enjoying the process. Like if you do have those fighters, and I have had them, who it's just all about training again today, can't be arsed, and got to fight and just want to get it out of the way.
This is a good one. What do you do? I've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
What do you do to make sure that the lads enjoy the sessions? What would you say that so they enjoy the journey? What are you doing in your sessions? I know you do a lot of competition between them, some fun stuff.
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's all that's what coaching is really. If we strip it all back, coaching is making the process as enjoyable for each person, and you got to know your athlete as well.
Yeah.
You got to know some athletes and some fighters are just strictly business. They don't care if it's fun or not. They're so driven that they'll do whatever they got to do, and it doesn't matter if it's fun or not. And as a good coach, you got to notice certain days when they come in and maybe they're not joking as much as normal, and they're walking a little slower pace as they're walking towards you, and all of a sudden, within 5 seconds of seeing them, you're like, right, something's going on there.
Okay.
And it could be something like, I sparred shit yesterday. And now they're mentally sparring, I'm not ready for this fight. I sparred shit. I felt unfit.
And then would you tweak the session, or what would you do differently?
Yeah. So it's all about adjusting. Honestly, 99% of what we actually do in sessions is probably not what I've planned.
Right.
Very rare. I don't think I've ever had a camp that's gone as I've programmed it. Never. Not once. Injuries, fatigue, you know, especially with fighters who are training so much, little niggles, all that sort of stuff. If an athlete is tired, then we go back to what we spoke about previously, those jumps, those med ball slams, make it fun. Get them doing stuff that's different. With the MMA guys, I like throwing in, like, I put a video the other day of Staff and Lou where they were doing like a little game, press up.
Yeah, I've seen that. That was
just
cool.
As a warm up, something completely different.
Yeah.
They're not getting any stronger, fitter from it, but it got them into the session, flew off the cobwebs, and then they were ready to go. So it's all about just adjusting on the fly, and that's what good coaching is. It's not being stuck to a certain program. It's actually, you know, even from your sort of point of view, if you program something and someone's like, I'm really not enjoying this,
would change it.
Yeah, you change it, and that program might be not as good, but for that person, if they're sticking to it and they're giving it more, probably going to be even better.
I think a common misconception with my stuff, we've got the 28-day challenge, and that's a rite of passage. It's a challenge that is predetermined. But it's 28 days.
Yeah.
But I think the 12 weeks, the 12-week transformation and the inner circle, the longer stuff I do, I've got a lot of lads now coming from a lot of more prestigious, if you like, or I like to think I'm getting there, but from other coaches or from other bigger gym or worldwide, if you like, I'm not saying who, transformation facilities and stuff. And what you've got to remember is that normally with most businesses or most coaching programs online, there might be one person behind it.
Yeah.
Like with me at Aesthetically Trained, with Reiss Elite Step. As it gets bigger and bigger, you've got a choice. You can either keep doing the coaching yourself and you can charge your time based on that, or you can go down more of a programmed, like a generic route. And that's what a lot of these bigger companies do, and the things that you pay for online. When you sign up for a 12-week program with Joe Blogs or fucking whoever it is online, the likelihood is that in week 1, they've already programmed what you're doing in week 10 or in week 12. It's a predetermined route based on the leader of that organisation or said social media personality. I had to do a lot of explaining to my lads. I come from some of these gurus or whatever you want to call them, that actually when you work with me, what you're paying for is my time and the flexibility in the process, that no matter what happens, I will get you through it. And that means that when you check in sometimes, I don't know what you're going to be doing until you check in, because I can't say for sure when I send a diet out, I've got a direction, as long as we're headed in the right direction. But I can't say for sure that when you check in that you're going to be up or down on the scale. So you might have had a bad week, you might not be enjoying the program. As we said, the coach's job is to direct you through whatever murky waters you go through, kind of thing. And the process should be flexible in that regard. You should be firm and fixed in your goals, but the route that you take will always depend on the individual. It shouldn't be a predetermined path. That's not what you're paying for at an elite level. That's the whole point of why Reiss works with elite athletes. When people pay for my one-to-one time, even in the inner circle, the group coaching I do, they're asking questions and we're amending it on the fly.
Yeah.
That's coaching. It's not a predetermined PDF where it's like, this is week 1, this is week 10, this is week 12. What about if you train terribly in weeks 5 to 8 and you've had a lot of stress at home, your diet's not right, you've been off plan, then do you just jump back in or do you restart? There's loads of factors that you need to consider. So really good, mate, really good. I like that. We'll agree on that.
And do you know what I wasted early when I started out? Because when you learn, you're taught, you do an annual plan for your fighters. This is pre-season or whatever sport. And then I was like, why am I doing this? I'm just literally spending 2 hours programming and I'm not even using it.
Yeah.
Like it's all gone to shit because, as you say, they've got an injury, can't do bench press.
Yeah.
They've now got a spar on a different day, so I can't do that session. So yeah, it is, and that's the difference between just coaching and paying for a program.
Yeah.
And that's why
people aren't paying for information, they're paying for implementation.
Yeah.
That's what I always say,
Yeah.
that they're paying for you personally to guide them through the process and make it work no matter what. So, right, last one before we go into a quick fire little chat questions we've got, and I think this will lead really nicely. So, Reiss, as we know, works with a lot of good boxers, UFC fighters. So what I want to know, I'm a boxing fan, I don't know as much about UFC. So what I want to know, Reiss, is who to look out for in boxing. What is your tips? If we go back and this podcast is fucking huge in 5 years' time as well, who's the boxer that you're going to say is going to blow up?
Do you know what? I've been thinking about this since you mentioned that it's going to be a question. I'm so stumped. The one that came to my head is more in the UFC. There's a guy in Manchester called Lerone Murphy, UFC. He actually, I'm not sure who he was fighting on before that, but he got a last minute fight during lockdown, got a draw. And then they signed a UFC contract.
Okay.
And then he's won 2 on the row there. So he's unbeaten in 3 I think he's got a big future.
Okay.
Good challenge for titles.
So Lerone Murphy, that is, and that's a UFC guy.
Good fighter. In boxing, that's a tough one, that, and obviously if you're looking local in Leeds, Hopey Price looks like a decent boxer, should have a big potential. Jack Bateson's kind of moving up the rankings now as well.
Yeah.
That's a hard one though. Obviously I'm biased to my guys, but I'm not going to mention them. I'd say those 2 in Leeds. I've gone blank though.
I'll jump in while Reiss thinks. I've got one of my good mates, Cyrus Patterson. He's just turned pro.
Yeah.
So one of my good friends from when I was younger, he's just turned pro and he's going to be fighting very soon on a matchroom. So look out for him.
If you're looking at the amateurs in the GB, the McCormack brothers, they're probably going to they're probably going to do very well in the program as well. But yeah, do you know what? British boxing is kind of like almost like having its second wave of elite level fighters. I think it was a few years ago we were kind of like had like 15 world champions.
Yeah, then it's had a bit of a dip.
I feel like now it's starting to come back up again. So it should be good.
Right then, some quick fire questions to finish off. We're just going to essentially chat shit for the last 10 minutes. So, start off nice and easy.
Hit me.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Good lad. Cats or dogs?
Dogs. I'm actually getting a dog as well. That showed you. Dogs all day. I don't like cats. They're selfish. Like what do you do with a cat? It's just around the house. Doesn't do anything. And then when it's feeding it, I don't get cats for me. I don't get them.
I'm a dogs person as well, as you'll all know with Bear. But yeah, rugby or football?
Football. 100%. Do you know what, actually, since I moved up to Leeds, I went uni in Leeds and everyone loved rugby. So I did start watching the rugby league a little bit, going and watching the Rhinos when they were good. And it was actually alright, to be fair. I don't mind rugby, but football all day long.
You're an Arsenal fan, aren't you?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah. Unfortunately.
What do you think of Arteta?
Do you know what, I kind of changed in the last few days, because after we lost in the Europa League semi, I was kind of like, do you know what a terrible season. I was like, but I can see what he's trying to do, and maybe he's the right man. But then I thought, bloody hell, we're 10th in the league. Yeah. We're 10th in the league. That is awful. Yeah. I'd probably give him one more season, one more summer transfer window to try and get a couple more players that he wants, and one more season. But if it's still like this next year, then I don't think you can stay But it's a hard one though as well, isn't it? Because really now, who's going to break City, United, Liverpool, Chelsea? You've got Tottenham up there. Everton has started to do all right. West Ham, it's just getting more and more competitive, and we've never been a club that's going to go spend 200 million that we probably need to even start to close the gap. Yeah. So I think we'll be joining you boys down in.
Get Steve Bruce in, he'll do the job for you, lad. Don't worry about that. This is a good one.
Go on.
AJ or Fury?
Fury. Do you know what? If I had to guess now, I don't even think it's going to be a close fight.
No?
I think Fury will stop him inside 5 rounds.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll be fucking buzzing if that happens.
I don't see anything Joshua does better than Fury. if he tries to stick it on him early doors, which I think is his best chance, try and use his strength, stick it on him.
Yeah.
I think Fury just goes on the back foot and jabs his head off for 12 rounds.
Yeah.
Joshua doesn't even get close to it. And I think if Fury then sticks it on him, I think he stops him quick.
I know closer to the time if this fight does happen, and certainly big fights in the future, I know me and Jack, I want to do some boxing episodes, so we'll get you on then. You can be the expert insight.
100%. But yeah, as of now, I'd say if I was betting, my money would be on Fury 5th round stoppage.
I want Fury to win. My concern would be that Fury doesn't live the life as much as Joshua. Joshua, as much as I don't dislike him, I think that he is very, very dedicated. He seems to be training a lot. I've no doubt that he is working on a game plan, and it might suit him in this one, possibly being the underdog. And is Fury a little bit complacent? Could he get caught cold? Fury wouldn't have fought in a really long time. Joshua obviously fought Pulev more recently. But yeah, it'll be fucking epic.
I think those ones as well, like those two, like Fury not living the life and not fighting for a while, but he's kind of already answered those questions, like 3 years out, and it didn't make his blind bit of difference. I think he's just so elite level that I just think he'll box his head off, to be honest. Yeah. But it's interesting. Hopefully get to see it.
Do you think it happens this year?
Yeah, well apparently it's like done.
It's going to be announced.
It's done now, August or something in Saudi Arabia, apparently, isn't it?
We'll see. Right, next couple are a little bit deeper, I guess. So, we'll say, what is the best? We mentioned about travelling earlier, and we just went travelling. That's when he kind of learned a little bit more about himself. I always like asking people about travelling in different places in the world. So, everything's opening back up.
Yeah.
What's the best place you've visited in the world?
So I would say, I lived in New Zealand for 2 years, so I love that place. But my favourite place I've ever been is Vietnam. It's class. Have you been?
No, I haven't.
It's class. You'd love it. It was just so good. It went for like 6 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Like the people.
Where did you go?
Friendly.
Did you go? Was it Hanoi?
Just travelled the whole country for 6 weeks, and it was just an unbelievable place. So cheap as well. Like a beer was like 50p. Go out, have a massive plate of noodles, chicken, everything for like $1. It's so cheap. Everyone's so friendly. It's like a really nice place as well. That's by far best place I've ever been. By far, I'd recommend it massively.
On the other side of that coin, what's the worst place you've visited?
You know what? Same trip. So after we went to Vietnam, we went out to Cambodia.
Yeah.
And as part of that, we went to the killing fields. I don't know how much you know about that, but I didn't know anything about it till we went, and we sort of researched it while we were there, and we went, and it was just horrible. Like, so it's basically, and I could be getting this completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was they were called like the Khmer Rouge or something. They were like the leaders, and they basically wanted to reset it to year 0. So they just went on a killing spree and killed anyone with any intelligence, doctors, teachers, just wiped them out. I think they killed about 3 million people in like a week or something. Wiped out the whole country, and they were recruiting kids basically to do it all. And then they'd wipe out all those kids' families because they didn't want anyone to grow older and then get revenge kills and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so it's just mad. So when you go to the killing fields, cut a long story short, there's so many dead bodies that there's still just bones in the ground, like they couldn't remove them all. There's like something they called like the killing tree, where they basically just get babies' heads, hold them by their legs, bam, throw them into a pit, bam, to kill them. It was the most horrible thing I've ever seen in my life.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, and after I left that, I sort of felt so bad that I'd never heard of it. It was only in the 70s that. It was in my parents' generation, mad, yeah.
That's right, I mean, it is important to travel. I've been there, I went to Auschwitz and stuff, and it's very harrowing when you're learning about these things. Like, it's important, it gives you a lot of context, and it makes you grateful for what we do have, for sure. But yeah, that was by far the worst place I've ever been. Next one. This is 2. We've got 2 questions left, and I think these are going to be 2 good ones. So, can be in life, can be in coaching, what is the worst piece of advice you've either been given yourself or you've heard given to someone else? There's obvious ones, but what's probably the one that maybe you feel people do take serious, or people believe? Do
you know what? This kind of goes back to what we spoke about at the start, in terms of like the failing. The people that, and I guess it's kind of the way we live now, is that everything's got to be happy and everything's 100% positive all the time, and da-da-da-da-da-da. But like when people kind of cover up, whatever the advice is, when people cover up the negatives, it's like let's be realistic, there is negatives.
Yeah.
You might fail, you might da-da-da-da-da-da, but
no positive without negative.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people try and sugarcoat stuff too much now and make it all sort of like rainbows and candy floss sort of thing. Whereas I think you have to be realistic at the same time. And yeah, there is a chance that you could fail. There is a chance it could go wrong. There's a chance, relationships are going to break up, whatever. And it's just being realistic and being like, how do you deal with that? How do you navigate yourself the best way? So I don't know about a specific piece of advice, but it's just the general trend of everything being all like positive, when you have to be realistic as well.
Got you. And then the last one, finishing note. what is the best piece of advice?
Best piece of advice is, it's a quote, right? It's actually a quote, not a piece of advice. And I think actually you replied to one of the stories about it. It was, I'm trying to remember it offline now. It's, we're not who we think we are. We're not who other people think we are. We're what we think other people think we are.
Yes.
So who we actually are in your mind, if you're ever feeling anxious, you're ever nervous about something, it's not because you think a certain thing. It's not because anyone else thinks a certain thing, because they don't really give a shit about you. It's because you think someone's thinking something of you. Whether that's that you failed, going back to the gym if it goes tits up. The only reason I'm scared of that is because I think someone's going to be mocking me. It's that perception. I think that's, as soon as you realise that, they're not actually thinking it because you're not that important that anyone really gives a shit about what you're doing.
Exactly.
They might laugh about it once for 5 seconds and then they don't think about it again.
Everyone's concentrating on their own thing.
Exactly. So that would be the best thing. And then the second one would be never go to someone or never take criticism from someone you won't go to from advice.
Yeah, that's a good one, I think. I think particularly when you're looking to get to a high level in anything, there's always going to be people who are trying to drag you down or comment on it. But like what Reiss said, perception's reality. You can just block them people out and just focus on the direction we're heading in. When you do have mistakes, when you do fail, like we've mentioned, I would always try to reframe that as an opportunity to learn. And a lot of the time, it's as cheesy it is, your biggest setbacks are the things that pave the way for you to move forward, and you can get your biggest lessons from those moments and those things. So awesome. Done, bro. Thank you very much.
I think we need to touch on why you didn't back my boy though. When we were betting.
Yeah, we'll finish off with this. So
I'll give the context to this one. I'd say we spoke about Sonny's fight leading up to. Obviously, he was the underdog, and I said to Ross, I was like, "Come on, get some money on him. He's going to box his head off for 12 rounds."
What were the odds?
I think he was at. So I think you put a tenner on and you got 24 back.
So it's like over. It's well over even. So Reiss come to me, being one of my good pals, and said, "Ross, Sonny's fighting. You like your boxing?" The lad he was fighting, bear in mind, he was fighting a guy who's South African running. I'm not even going to attempt his second name because it was pretty full on. But was he like 10 years undefeated or something?
13 years undefeated. What was he, 26 knockouts in 38 fights or something? And
he was avoided. He was meant to be this fucking Iceman at the weight, and he was meant to be a stone cold killer and all this. And Reiss said, "Look, Sonny's going to beat him. He's going to box his head off. You should put some money on it." And listen, he's going to come on at some point. I listen to my good friend Mikey and take betting tips off him all the fucking time on horses that never come in. I don't think he's won a bet this year, never mind fucking ever. And Reiss come to me having some inside information and was like, "Listen, Sonny's going to win, you should put some money on it." I didn't do it. And then Reiss obviously won, Sonny won, and I'm here out of pocket, so I should have listened. So if you do know anyone in the game, you should always listen to their advice. Use the experts that you have. So that's it. Awesome. Thanks very much, bro. I enjoyed it. I hope everyone enjoyed that's listening. We will be back for the next episode very soon. You can catch Reiss on Instagram, social media, everywhere. If you just search Elite Step, he has just opened, as you can see here on the YouTube. This is his gym. This is his Elite Step strength box. Look him up. He's fucking sick. He's putting out loads of good content for fighters. You might see some fighters that you know, but also he's one of the very best at what he does, and that's why I got him on today. So I hope you enjoyed it. Drop a comment below, like, do all the normal stuff. Have a mint day.
Laters.
You've been listening to Aesthetically Trained, the podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and spread the word.